Last year alone, over 70,000 Australians left the country permanently. That's the highest number in modern history. Young professionals, new families, and even retirees are packing up and leaving behind the life they were promised. Not because of opportunities, but because of living cost, housing stress, and a future that no longer feels secure. Australia was once the lucky country. Affordable homes, free education, and a fair go for all. That promise pulled generations across oceans. So what happened? Why is one of the richest, most developed countries in the world now losing its people? Let's break down exactly why more Australians than ever are saying enough is enough. There was a time when Australia was seen as one of the best places in the world to live. The country built its reputation on stability, prosperity, and opportunity. Living up to its name, it was known as the lucky country by the early 2000s. It had everything: strong economy, political stability, and exceptional quality of life that attracted migrants from across the globe. Between 1991 and 2020, it experienced an almost uninterrupted period of economic growth, nearly 30 years without a recession. So much so that in 2019, Australia ranked second on the UN Human Development Index, just behind Norway. Interestingly, Australia has had one of the highest rates of millionaires per capita too, over 2.2 million adult millionaires in 2022. More than adults in the US, UK, or Germany. Wages were competitive, unemployment was low, and the quality of life was considered among the best globally, along with a strong public healthcare system, Medicare, and access to free education. That was the Australia that many believed in, and for a time it worked, until the cracks started to show. Today, the same Australia is known for its unimaginable living costs, dead wages, and a system that is no longer working in anyone's favour. The average price of a home in Sydney now exceeds $1.6 million, making it the second most unaffordable city in the world relative to income. Even in regional areas, prices have surged so high that it left first home buyers priced out across the country. Rents have followed the same pattern. In major cities like Brisbane and Perth, rents have jumped by over 30% since 2021, according to CoreLogic. Many renters now spend more than a third of their income just to keep a roof over their heads. That is the true definition of housing stress. Meanwhile, wage growth has failed to keep up. The Australian Bureau of Statistics reports average wage increases of just 3.4% in 2023. While inflation peaked at 7.8% the same year. Essentials like groceries, electricity, and healthcare have all seen double-digit price rises. The burden of higher education is growing too. Due to indexation, some HECS/HELP debts increased by thousands overnight in 2023 alone. Many graduates now carry debts well into their 30s and 40s. The reasons so many people once came to Australia are now the very things some are leaving for. And that raises a serious question. What went wrong?
Everyone wants to always pay more, and it's just so expensive.
Primarily, Australia is currently facing one of the worst housing crises in the developed world. In 2024, Sydney ranks as the second most unaffordable city globally, just behind Hong Kong. Melbourne, Brisbane, and Adelaide are also among the top 20 least affordable cities. The average price of a home in Sydney is now over $1.5 million, while the average full-time salary is around $74,000. Back in 1970, the average house in Sydney cost $18,700, while the average annual salary was $4,200, about 4.5 years' worth of income. Today, the average salary is around $74,000, yet Sydney's median home price sits near $1.5 million. That's over 20 years' worth of income, assuming that you have zero expenses. A household earning $105,000 can only afford 13% of homes on the market. And for those who do buy, the cost is long-term debt. Australia now has one of the highest household debt levels in the world. This is largely driven by massive mortgages. The dream of home ownership has slipped even further out of reach, especially for younger Australians. In 2024, a shabby home in Sydney, lacking a toilet, kitchen or power, sold for $3.5 million after an intense bidding war. The root of the problem is simple. Demand keeps rising, but supply is locked. The planning laws favour large, single-family neighbourhoods over crowded cities. Moreover, there is a lack of land for cities to expand onto. But what's causing this rising demand? That brings us to the next issue: immigration. Australia experiences one of the largest population surges in its modern history, and it's being driven almost entirely by overseas migration. From 2022 to 2023, the country welcomed nearly 740,000 new arrivals, a figure that exceeds pre-COVID levels by over 200,000 people, marking the highest immigration intake since 1966. Critics argue this spike came at the worst possible time. The construction sector was already under strain. Post-pandemic material shortages and labour issues had made it 40% more expensive to build a home, and building times stretched 18% longer than average. With supply slowed and demand exploding, housing affordability worsened across the board. While immigration does help fill labour shortages in aged care, tech and hospitality, its scale has outpaced infrastructure. The majority of new immigrants arrive on temporary visas, and 70% of them rent, placing intense pressure on already tight rental markets. Suburbs in Melbourne's southeast and Sydney's inner southwest, areas with high migrant populations, saw rents increase by up to 18% in just 1 year. So, what happens when record migration meets limited housing? The result is what we're seeing now: an economy under pressure, where more and more people are being left out of basic needs due to high living costs. For years, Australians believed that if you worked hard, you could afford a home, raise a family, and live comfortably. But today, that equation no longer adds up. While full-time wages have increased by only 12% over the past 5 years, basic living costs have skyrocketed across the board. This mismatch is pushing millions of Australians to the edge, and in many cases, pushing them out. Take rents, for example. Median rents in Sydney now exceed $3,000 per month, with Brisbane close behind at $2,500. Demand is so high that rental applicants often line up for hours just to view a property. The national vacancy rate, just 1.9%. For renters, 42% say they will struggle to pay rent in the coming quarter, and half worry about potential homelessness. The cost of food has also increased. Grocery prices rose by 8% in the last year alone, and electricity costs went up by 15.5%, the biggest increase since 2013. Medical services grew by 6.7%, while hotel and airfare expenses increased by 25%. Meanwhile, many households are either depending on credit or reducing necessary expenses to make ends meet, although the average household income is still unchanged. The toll is visible. According to government data, over 3.3 million people now live in poverty. In 2024, 58% of renters faced rent hikes, averaging $53 more per week, and 42% reported they may not be able to pay rent in the coming months. Among mortgage holders, 30% are concerned about meeting their repayments. These financial pressures are affecting daily choices. A reported 15% of households have gone without food or heating recently. Over 37% of Australians have cut back on living expenses or moved to cheaper or shared housing. Now, even working full-time still isn't enough to survive. So what does that say about the system? where the headlines suggest a strong economy every day. One of the most pressing reasons behind Australia's current crisis is long-term political mismanagement. Decades of inconsistent leadership and short-term policy making have left systems under strain. Housing is one of the clearest examples of poor planning. The government has created policies like negative gearing and capital gains tax breaks that give investors a big advantage over first home buyers. These policies have pushed up property prices and made it harder for regular Australians to enter the market. At the same time, governments haven't kept up with population growth. From 2000 to 2023, Australia's population grew by more than 30%, but cities are still dealing with packed trains, not enough schools, and long hospital wait lists. On top of that, federal and state governments continue to move slowly and struggle to work together. In 2023, the Productivity Commission called out both levels of government for reacting to problems instead of planning. The student debt crisis is another example. The Higher Education Loan Program, HELP, once considered a fair system, now adds thousands in debt annually due to CPI indexation, 7.1% in 2023 alone. So far, no government has passed any major reforms to protect students from rising inflation. In 2024, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese announced a $32 billion plan to build 1.2 million new homes over the next 5 years. It's one of the biggest housing projects in Australia's history. But critics argue that the plan misses the real problems. It doesn't fix the strict zoning laws, tax breaks that favour property investors, or the immigration policies that keep pushing demand higher without matching supply. Australia's short election cycles also make things worse. Politicians focus on winning votes instead of solving long-term issues. Experts at the Grattan Institute say leaders here have traded real planning for quick political wins. Now there's another silent force reshaping the country's future, one that no policy can ignore: Australia's worsening climate. Australia is known for its beautiful landscapes, but it's also one of the most climatically extreme countries in the world. Summers regularly bring intense heat waves, with temperatures soaring above 40 degrees Celsius, that's 104 degrees Fahrenheit in many regions. According to the Bureau of Meteorology, 2023 marked one of the hottest and driest periods since the infamous Black Summer bushfires of 2019 to 2020. Sydney alone experienced record-breaking spring temperatures, prompting early school closures due to fire risks. These intense heat waves have direct consequences. Australia has one of the highest rates of skin cancer worldwide, with 2 out of every 3 Australians expected to be diagnosed by age 70, according to Cancer Council Australia. The extreme heat also strains infrastructure, health services, and increases energy consumption. Beyond heat, Australia faces a growing risk of catastrophic bushfires. The recent vegetation growth has created more fuel for these fires, increasing the likelihood of future dangerous seasons. Meanwhile, sudden and severe storms, flash floods and tropical cyclones, particularly in northern Australia, add unpredictability to daily life. These extreme weather events disrupt communities, damage homes, and impact local economies regularly. This harsh and unpredictable climate is another reason in the story of this country that's becoming harder to call home. With these constant threats, what is left of the Australian dream now? Australia now finds itself at a quiet but serious turning point as more citizens choose to leave. The country is experiencing a brain drain. In recent years, a rising number of young professionals and skilled workers have moved overseas, not just for cheaper living, but for better career growth and stability. According to the ABS, over 70,000 Australians permanently left in the last quarter of 2024. With 65,000 in September 2024 and 63,000 in June 2024. Many in sectors like healthcare, tech, and education. At the same time, birth rates are falling. In 2023, Australia's fertility rate dropped to 1.5 from 1.86 in 1993, with experts saying there's no going back after this. This shows young adults growing hesitation to start families in an economy that is uncertain and unaffordable. There's also a decline in social trust and cohesion. A 2025 study by Bond University found that only 33.4% of Australians believe they can trust the federal government to do what is right most of the time. This disillusionment isn't just political, it's cultural. Community groups, volunteer networks, and even local sports clubs have seen falling participation rates, reflecting a broader sense of disengagement. These are not just statistics. They are signs of a country unsure of its direction, caught between the memory of what it once was and the uncertainty of what it might become. When hope becomes unaffordable, people don't wait around, they walk. What's happening in Australia isn't just a housing issue or a paycheck problem. It's a wake-up call. Do you think Australia can turn this around, or is the damage already done? Drop a comment below. We'd like to hear your take on it.